But the voluminous amount of records either came from Deborah Salisbury or the Department of Children and Families. I did reach out to the children's attorney, but I was not provided documents from them, and that's listed in the report.
When you interviewed
I should have, and all children's gave me some records directly. I think that's listed in there.
Understood. When you interviewed Maya, she did convey to you that she was told that the ketamine coma in Mexico carried a 50-50 risk of death.
Without looking at my report, I don't recall specifically what she said, but I knew that she knew there was a high risk of death. That's in my report. That she heard the doctor. She said directly the doctor spoke with her about it. I just don't have it in front of me. I mean, I don't want to misstate something.
No, I'm happy to show it to you. That is what your report says. Okay.
Then she said that if I said that.
Let me ask you about your evaluation of Bia. At any time during your evaluation of her, did she express any suicide ideation at all?
She did not.
Okay. And based on your assessment of her, did you consider her to be suicidal?
I did not. I would have taken further action if I thought somebody was at immediate risk for self-harm. As a mental health professional, I can make her act. But she never even described having thoughts of death to me, much less a plan.
One moment, Your Honor. I appreciate your time today. I don't have any more questions for you. Thank you.
Mr. Witt?
Were you aware that the only person in this admission at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital that claimed to have diagnosed Munchausen by proxy was Dr. Sally Smith?
I don't recall seeing anyone else making that diagnosis other than Sally Smith.
And you're aware that she's a rotation director for the residency program at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Okay, the objection is overruled.
So Sally Smith is the rotation director for the residency program at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
I do not recall being aware of that specific appointment, but I know that she had some affiliation with them.
And you're aware that she had staff privileges at the hospital?
That was my understanding when I said affiliation.
And you're aware that she serves on multiple executive committees at the hospital?
Back to the leading, Your Honor.
I'm going to sustain the leading.
Are you aware that Dr. Sally Smith serves on multiple executive committees at the hospital?
I do not know if I'm aware of that, but again, I knew that she did some work at the hospital and that she had privileges.
So there was a lot of discussion about Dr. Lewis and him coming in to evaluate Maya at the hospital. Are you aware that the hospital was directed to conduct a neuropsychological evaluation?
I do not recall specifically that the hospital was directed. I knew that I got his evaluation because Dr. Kastenstein's a neuropsychologist as well.
Are you aware that Dr. Sally Smith handpicked Dr. Lewis to come and do the neuropsychological evaluation?
Your Honor, I just object to the leading. I'd like the witness, anyway, object to the leading.
Okay, sustained on leading.
Are you aware how Dr. Lewis was selected to perform the neuropsychological evaluation at the hospital?
I recall reading in some of the information, I believe it may have been in his report, I don't have it in front of me, that the referral, Dr. Smith made a referral.
All right.
I am aware of that.
And so several statements were put on the screen about what Maya allegedly said to Dr. Lewis. Are you aware that Maya disputes Dr. Lewis's reporting?
She disputed some of that specific reporting to me, so I'm aware of some of that.
And earlier you testified, I think, on my questions that, and perhaps on counsel's questions, that you, subject to request from the hospital, provided your raw testing data and the totality of your file for these psychological evaluations, did you not?
It was for Maya's, I believe, the raw test data. I believe they had a hearing, and
All right, so Dr. Lewis makes these statements which Maya disputes. Are you aware that when a request was made to Dr. Lewis for his raw testing data and notes, he claimed to have lost them?
Object to the leading again.
I'm not aware
I'm
of
going to
any,
overrule that one.
I'm not aware of any records requests other than what was made in my office.
So have you ever seen the notes or a recording of the interview or raw testing data from Dr. Lewis?
I've only seen his written product, the report.
And during this interview, we've established Maya was on multiple medications from the hospital.
Based on the information and the records that she'd taken medication the day before.
All right. Now, with regards to 4 hours of cognitive behavioral therapy, your comments during my questions were limited to the limited cognitive behavioral therapy that the hospital provided during that 3.5-month span, right?
Yes.
And that's what led you to characterize the hospitalization as warehousing this girl.
Yes, and the fact that my understanding is that Dr. Lewis recommended the neurological consult, and throughout the entire process, everybody said a neurologist would be the one to rule out the diagnosis or confirm that the medical doctors were telling me I'm not qualified to do that. And the information provided to me is that that never happened.
And so you were confronted a minute ago with a bunch of physical therapy and occupational therapy records. You never expressed any opinion on the adequacy of occupational therapy or physical therapy at the hospital, did you?
No.
And in everything they presented you, did they confront you in any way with any additional cognitive behavioral therapy record to dispute the 4-hour figure that you tallied?
No, like I just said, the information I have was a duplicate of what I'd previously gotten that y'all provided me with regard to the psychological and psychiatry notes.
The problem that you were pointing out, if I understood you correctly, was that they were alleging that Maya had a psychological disorder. Meanwhile, they provided 4 hours of psychological therapy over 3.5 months.
It's leading in us to answer.
I'm going to sustain the yes answer.
What is the problem with alleging that a 10-year-old girl has a psychological disorder but not providing therapy, if there is a problem with that?
Well, I think at a minimum, even though I didn't evaluate Maya early on, at a minimum she was on a psychotherapy regimen of getting it weekly. So I would have expected them at least to start with that, and then if she made significant improvements, they might, titrate the therapy, go to both bi-weekly or less frequently. And I think that even whether her issues were psychological exclusively, as some people are taking the position of, or whether it was a medical problem and there were some psychological problems interrelated, secondary, I think certainly the professionals that worked with her in the mental health field, Dr. Katzstein, was even seeing this child was very distressed for a lot of the circumstances. And I think that there was a lot of documentation where, I didn't do the PT, that she got PT because they would go to get psychotherapy and she would be gone, but then there was no makeup session in the hospital.
All right, last area. There was discussion about these attempts to transfer Maya Kowalski to Nemours. Are you aware of the transfer diagnosis that the hospital actually tried to transfer her under to Nemours?
I think I said earlier, I don't recall the specifics of it. It's been a long time. I just knew that there was some dispute on whether it was going to be an appropriate placement based on, I think that there were some concerns about parents had on whether they could do medical. It wasn't clear to me. I just knew the child never got moved. It wasn't clear to me all the dynamics between all children's, maybe the dependency action and the parents. I wasn't privy to all that.
And so you weren't aware that Johns Hopkins, All Children's Hospital, was trying to force a transfer?
I object to the foundation. She just said she's not aware, and now he's about to give her a leading question to suggest what she's not aware of.
Were you aware of Beata Kowalski's sensitivity to having Maya Kowalski diagnosed with a psychiatric or psychological disorder?
I was aware from my work with Beata that she was concerned that the medical issues, that she had a real medical problem that was being dismissed and labeled strictly psychological. I did not get the impression in my evaluation of her that she was against any type of therapy or intervention. In fact, her therapist reported to me, and it was in the notes, that her and Maya's dad consistently brought Maya to therapy sessions for therapy after having the illness diagnosed.
All right, so we know that Dr. Katzenstein believed that this child had a physical condition, right?
So she told me.
All right, assume for the purposes of this question that Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital is trying to transfer Maya Kowalski, not with a physical diagnosis, but with a psychiatric diagnosis. Knowing what you know about Beata Kowalski, would it make sense for her to resist those efforts?
Objection to the speculation.
Sustained.
Are you aware of a phone call that was recorded regarding this dispute over the discharge diagnosis to Nemours?
I don't believe that I ever listened to any phone call or was provided information on that. Like I said, I got limited information because my work was pretty focused on what I was doing as part of. They had a lot of hearings I wasn't involved in.
I think in summary, your testimony is that you're not familiar with all of the dispute over what diagnosis the hospital was attempting to transfer Maya to Nemours under. Is that right?
True, I had limited information on all the transfer, potential transfer.
No further questions. Thank you.
Very brief redirect, Your Honor. Just to cover a couple things. You are aware, at least in your review of the Tampa General records, and again, Clay, if you want to pull up 3047-10.
Is it in evidence?
Tampa General's not?
It's not an
Okay.
objection.
Don't put it up on the screen, that's fine. You are aware in your review of the records, there had already been discussion of a psychiatric condition prior to Maya coming to All Children's, true?
I was aware that there were some of those issues, and the child was aware because she did not like TGH for that reason.
Because they labeled her with a psychological condition.
Yes,
Objection.
that was.
And what's the legal basis?
He's asking, it's speculation.
Overruled.
The
You can
reason
answer.
Maya didn't like Tampa General is because they had diagnosed her with a psychiatric condition, correct?
What I was communicated is that they did not believe her, that she had a medical issue. As the resistance was that they were overlooking some of the medical issues, was my understanding, is why she was upset about them.
Just two really quick points. One on your report, Trial Exhibit 2006-10. At the very bottom it says, interview with Sally Smith, MD, CPT, Medical Director. What is CPT?
child protection team.
It was your understanding that Sally Smith's role in this case was as the Child Protective Services Medical Director, true?
I would have not listed that, but if that was not the case, I knew that she was involved with CPT, and that was on the documentation I believe I received from her. I'd have to look at it.
It's not a trick question.
Okay, no, I'm just saying, like, I would list it at that because that was my understanding she was working with CPT, yes.
Okay. Last question. It's on Joint Exhibit 1046. And I'm going to ask you on question, starting on page 2 at the very bottom. You were asked some questions about whether Maya may have been on medications that may have affected her memory at the time she spoke with Dr. Lewis. Do you remember those questions?
I think I testified earlier that I could not weigh an opinion on them because I'm not a medical doctor.
Okay. You did review this report, though, true? This
Yes.
is Dr. Lewis's report. At the bottom, it says during the 3-hour session, do you see that?
Yes.
Where Maya engaged in many mentally strenuous tasks and some tasks that are physically strenuous due to the visual fine motor, handwriting and copying, and then Clay, if you go to the next page, demands. Maya at no time spontaneously initiates any verbal expressions of pain or cramping. Did you see that?
I did see that.
And in the next sentence, it says, the absence of any spontaneously initiated complaints of pain is noteworthy in that on that day of testing, the only opioid analgesic listed in Maya's all children's medication regimen is PRN, meaning as needed, tramadol, and the attending nurse indicates that Maya has not taken that medication on that morning that she has seen for a 3-hour afternoon assessment.
I was worried that I think I testified that earlier that he had said she didn't take medication.
So just to be clear, according to Dr. Lewis's report that you reviewed and relied on to some extent, Maya was not on any medication during his examination.
That was my understanding. I was familiar with the task because I'm familiar with the test that he had her do too.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Anything brief?
Very brief.
You wouldn't expect that, would you? Okay, let me strike that. You met Maya on 2 occasions, correct?
Yes.
If the record shows that Maya did complain to the doctors at the hospital of physical and sexual abuse on multiple occasions,
Objection, Your Honor, move to strike. How do you approach it when you say
Members of the jury, I'm going to sustain the objection. I'm also going to direct you to specifically disregard Mr. Whitney's beginning of the question. Anything else, Mr. Whitney?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
There's nothing further.
Members of the jury, do you all have any questions? Okay, I've got a couple of them coming on down. Okay, members of the jury, I'm going to go ahead and ask all the questions. Just as a reminder, if when we're having this, if you want to stand up and stretch, you are more than welcome. In fact, you're always welcome to stand and stretch, even if we're having questions. Anything that you want to do, that's fine. Okay. Well, I shouldn't say that. Transcript will say that there were absolutely no laughs with that one. Okay, Dr. Duncan, how many hours is appropriate for psych treatment without resolving the medical diagnosis?
I evaluated mine, but it was at the latter end, so I didn't evaluate it early on. But I would have anticipated they would have started with at least an hour minimum of therapy, because that's what her prior person that was seeing her was providing. So I would have think at that assessment, then they could determine if they need to increase or decrease their frequency. But I was just shocked with the drastic drop, even overall, because she was getting about at least an hour a week before, was my understanding.
Okay, the next question from the jury. In the absence of medical diagnosis, in the light of the patient treatment, would you or of the PT, physical therapy treatment, would you still use the word warehouse in reference to all children's?
Can you read that one more time?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I misread
No,
it.
you do a good job. Just me, I'm tired.
In the absence of medical diagnosis, in the light of the physical therapy treatment, would you still use the word warehouse in reference to all children's hospital?
I used that term because I did not think they were following up on the neurological line, so I had to figure out what was going on medically with her. And also, they were not providing, there was a lot of suggestion that it was just strictly psychological in nature. And so I would have anticipated getting more than 3 hours of therapy past the initial assessment. As far as PT, I'm not a medical doctor, but in my experience, people that get PT, I've worked in inpatient rehab, they usually have a medical diagnosis to get that, so.
The next question from the jury. Can collateral interviews be performed with individuals that you deem necessary or only with individuals that are provided by your client?
I do both as part of my evaluation. So, they did in this case like list the teachers, but it's not uncommon for people not to list people. And so in my work, just not in this case, I often ask to speak to individuals that may be not listed that I know are relevant. Obviously the people can choose to participate or not, the collateral can, but in this case, I believe that all of the collaterals, the majority of them, the family did provide me as far as like the professionals and so forth, but I don't recall anybody like specifically say, can you call Dr. Katzenstein, and I make the effort to call her.
The next question. Do you know if there was an option to apply for temporary privileges at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital that would fast track an approval to allow you to evaluate Maya at the hospital, Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
My understanding was there wasn't. They just kind of have like a meeting, and it's usually 2 or 3 months, because I know that I had some discussions, and it was probably like in December. It was prior to me evaluating her, and so there wasn't anything that I was told about, and I couldn't find anything online about it. So I inquired. I think it was actually Catherine Beatty that maybe initially that I had asked about, and she directed me to somebody.
Okay. Plaintiffs, any further follow-up questions?
Nothing from plaintiffs.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Jurors, any further follow-up questions? May Dr. Duncan be excused?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members of the jury, there is one more witness for today. Do you all want or need to take a 5-minute break, or I'm told that we will be able to finish by 5 o'clock if we start right away.
Judge, I do have a small issue I need to bring to the court's attention before the next witness.
Why don't we take a quick 5-minute break?
Sorry.
Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation. Receive no information. But let's keep this to 5 minutes.
All right, for a second thing.
Okay, the jury's out of our presence. Ms. Quarles, you spoke first, so what's your issue?
Okay. Judge, the issue that I have with the next
And everyone, feel free to sit down if you want. If you need to go use the restroom yourselves, feel free to do that too.
The issue I have with this next witness, Judge, is anticipated hearsay that they're going to try to get from Father Costello, and I wanted to address it with the court now. When Father Costello was deposed, he indicated that when he went to the hospital, All Children's, the first time, he was met by a caseworker who told him that he could not pray with Maya because there was a belief the mother was using God and religion to control Maya, so he could not talk to her about religion or give her the sacrament. When he was asked who was that caseworker, he said, I don't know. And then he was specifically asked on page 88 of his deposition, do you recall the name of that individual? No, I just remember I met her in the lobby. Do you recall if she worked for the Department of Children and Families? I don't remember, to tell the truth. So he cannot identify this caseworker as somebody that works for the hospital. And I wanted to raise that now and object to that hearsay coming in.
It sounds like cross-examination to me, and party admissions do not require a specific statement of who someone was, rather just the circumstances. In this instance, this was their hospital, and he can identify by hair color and what they looked like coming down there and having a lab coat on in order to tell him about this. So I doubt very seriously that the CPT people are walking around Johns Hopkins in a lab coat.
Other than Dr. Sally Smith.
Other than Dr. Sally Smith, you have a pretty good point there.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection on the theory that Mr. Anderson articulated. What's the next issue?
That was the only issue, Judge.
Okay. What's your issue, Mr. Anderson?
My issue is with the last witness's cross-examination, we objected to the line of questioning having to do with the transfer to Nemours Children's Hospital. That document was never in evidence. We objected. I moved to strike that line of testimony and an instruction to the jury about it because it was cross-examination on a document that was not in evidence and the witness did not identify.
First of all, the document wasn't evidence. It was the Johns Hopkins all children's record.
It's the Nemours record.
No, it was Johns Hopkins all children's record.
Kelly?
Looks like we're getting a whole bunch of Starbucks.
Would you like one, Your Honor?
No, thank you.
That's gonna get spilled
Wasn't
everywhere.
It was Exhibit 1001. It was the all children's record.
I'm overruling that objection in the motion. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Do any of the lawyers need to take a break, or are we ready to, as soon as the jury's ready, are we all ready to?
Let's just do Dr. Father Costello.
Let's go see if the jury's ready. Let's be careful with all those drinks.
Yes, Your Honor.
No.
New carpet.
Yeah.
Good for it.
All rise for a second entering.
Okay, welcome back, members of the jury. Please be seated. Just want to confirm while you're away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves. You did no investigation and you received no information. Is that all correct?
Correct.
Mr. Anderson, your next witness, please.
Plaintiff's call Father Jack Costello.
Raise the clerk and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. You can come around this way. Just have a seat.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Please state your name for the record.
Father John Costello.
And you were at one point priest to the parish that the Kowalskis were members of?
Yes.
Where were you born? Tell us a little bit about your background.
I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, oldest of 8 children. Went to all Catholic schools, grammar school, high school, college, grad school. When I graduated high school, I went into the Irish Christian Brothers, which is a religious community that teaches school. I taught all over the East Coast, mainly biology, microbiology, anatomy, and different theology courses. And then I developed a vocal cord problem when I was in New Jersey, and I finally went to Mass General, and they told me to move to Florida. So that's how I
There you are.
ended in Florida, because the humidity would help my vocal cords stick together.
Got it.
So that's how I ended up here. Back in '93, I left the Brothers because of the voice. I couldn't run the labs. You have to be loud. So I felt a calling to priesthood. So in '96, I was ordained to this diocese. And I went a few parishes, Naples, Bradenton, and then the bishop asked me to go to the cathedral in Venice here. And I was there 13 years.
Very good. And are you still, and I don't know if the term is practicing, or are you still,
Well, I'm retired, but I'm still active.
okay,
Covering
you're called in
masses
from time to time to,
more than time to time.
all right. And so, you know the Kowalskis,
Yes, yeah.
and did you know that you knew the Kowalskis prior to these incidents with Johns Hopkins?
Yes.
Tell the jury about how long and how well you knew the Kowalskis.
How I met them was Sister Frances Lawler, who ran our religious education program, came to me, I think it was in the fall of 2015, early 2016. I mentioned that there was a family in the religious ed program that had a sick daughter, and they wanted me to come to the home and give her the sacrament of the sick. So Sister and I went to their home. That's the first time I got to know them.
Okay. And so, do you have, did you see the Kowalskis then at the church, at the parish?
Yeah, after that, because I met them,
Right.
if I had a mass they were at, I'd see Maya there and the family.
So approximately how, before all of this occurred, how long had you known them?
8 months, a year.
Okay. But you were their parish priest,
Yes,
and you had the opportunity to speak with them from time to time?
yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, I'd like to then turn to the first time that you found out anything about Maya Kowalski's illness. How did that come about?
Well, as I mentioned, Sister mentioned it to me first.
Mm-hmm.
Then going to the home, Beata, the mother, explained what Maya had been going through. And then a couple of months after that, Sister came to me about that the family needed money for medicine for her. Could we help them out?
All right. And was there a drive there at the hospital to try to raise some money for them because of the costs?
Yes, there were, the parish, I spoke before all the masses, and I told people that she had a disease, that we heard that the only way they could treat it was a medicine that in the U.S. they didn't give to children. They had to go to Mexico. So if they'd like to help the family out, they could put checks in the collection, but made out to the family.
And how much did you ultimately raise? Some $14,000?
Roughly about 14,000 and a half, 14,500.
Very good. Now, did there come a time that you found out that Maya was at Tampa General Hospital?
Yes, yep.
And did you visit her there at Tampa General?
Yes, I drove up, went into the hospital, found out what room she was in, went up, and I anointed her.
Did you have any problem getting up to her room insofar as anyone addressing you or delaying you or causing you any problem?
No,
And how long did you stay with Maya? Just
It was a Saturday afternoon. I had to get back for masses, so it was not too long, maybe half hour.
Okay. And so then, tell us what happened next. How did it come about that you tried to see Maya again, or did see Maya again?
The next time I would have seen her was I received a call from Beata, and she mentioned that her, Jack, and Kyle weren't able to see her. She was worried about Maya's state of mind and physical condition, and asked me would I go up and anoint her, as well as should get to see a familiar face, I believe she said.
Had you heard by this point about the problems with the traveling Mary statue?
No.
Okay, so the family asked you then just to come in and give a hand since they couldn't. All right, so when you arrived at the hospital, having had no problems at Tampa General, tell us what happened.
I parked my car, I went into the lobby, I went over to the reception desk. I think it was an older person there. Told her who I was, that the family would like me to see their daughter, and she just said to me, well, the caseworker has to approve everyone who sees her, and I said, fine, I'll sit and wait.
Okay, and so who came down? Can you describe who it was?
It was a lady, middle age, brown hair,
Okay,
long, and she had on a white coat and I believe a dress.
okay, very good. Now, did she allow you to go up?
She allowed me, she said I could go up and see Maya.
Did she put any conditions on it?
She said I could go up and see her. I wasn't able to do anything religious with her.
Why did
be-
they say you couldn't do anything, quote, religious with her?
Because she mentioned that they believed the mother was controlling her using religion.
And so did you ultimately get a chance to see Maya that day?
I got up to go up, but it had to be supervised. The nurse was with me for about 10 minutes.
All right, so over this period of time, what'd you do? Just talk?
I just talked to her, yes, yeah.
Okay. And how was she doing when you saw her?
She looked I believe, lying on the bed. She was coloring. She looked withdrawn, quiet.
How about her feet? Did you notice anything unusual about her feet?
Well, as usual, they were pointed in,
Like this or this? Like
inward.
this? Okay. All right. And what time of the year was this? Was it in the summer or fall? Was it around the holidays?
Fall, sometime in the fall.
And would this have been in 2016?
2016, yes.
All right. Okay, so in getting to know Beata through the course of this, how would you describe her to the jury in terms of her feelings about Maya?
As far as she was a loving mother, didn't notice anything different when I anointed her at the home. Should have the concern as anyone else about a sick child. She seemed to be loving to both Maya and Kyle.
Okay.
Very concerned about her daughter's health.
Certainly. All right. Now, did there come a time then when you came with Beata to a proceeding and sat next to her for support?
Object, Your Honor, and ask to approach.
Objection sustained.
And during the times before Beata's death, did you have an opportunity to talk with her occasionally and see her?
Yes, I had occasion to talk to her.
Okay. And how is she doing?
She was under a lot of stress.
Do you think she blamed herself?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Sustained.
So then, how did you learn that Beata had taken her own life?
I don't remember if it was sister or her brother called to let us know that she had passed.
Was it on that day of the suicide?
It was the day she had died, yes.
And what did you do?
They asked if I'd come to the house and say prayers for the dead
Okay.
and be there for the family.
And did you go to see the family?
Yes,
And try to comfort them? And
yes.
it goes without saying, but how were they doing by the time you got there?
Very distraught, shocked,
Okay. And-
worried about how to tell the kids.
All right. Following this, then, did you have a service for Beata?
Yes, we had a mass in the cathedral.
And during this service, I guess you went over the life of Beata and what she was like, so forth?
Usually what I do to develop a homily is get the family and friends to tell me like what her qualities as a wife, a mother, friends talking, and then from my own experience in the parish.
Right. Were you ever aware that Maya had certain items taken from her at the hospital?
Objection.
Religious? Was
What's
that-
the objection?
Relevance and leading.
Overruled on both. You can answer.
Yeah, I was told by Beata.
Okay.
Objection, Your Honor, based on hearsay.
Okay, sustained on the hearsay.
All right, so during the service, did you talk at all to the family as well as the parishioners about the why and how? What did you tell the parishioners to, I don't know, explain what happened?
Your Honor, hearsay as to what he told other people about things. I'm not sure where we're going, but hearsay.
It's not for the truth matter sort of judge, it's just simply
That is not
to discuss what the, what was said and what his belief was.
Sustained.
And so, after that point, were you able to stay in touch with the Kowalskis?
Yes,
And have they been attempting to get over this?
yes, over the years, yes.
But it's still difficult for them.
Yes.
Do you believe that from everything you saw and heard from Beata, she was determined to get her daughter out of that situation?
Objection. Irrelevant as to his belief.
Overruled. You can answer that one.
After the ruling that continuance that she couldn't hug her daughter,
Yeah.
I talked to her after that in the courtroom, and she told me that she'd never get her daughter
Your
home.
Honor, I state
I did.
The court sustains the hearsay statements as to what was told to him by Beata Kowalski.
But from everything you saw and knew about Beata Kowalski, what was her point of view or goal?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculative, based on hearsay.
Sustain.
From what you saw and heard, Beata wasn't controlling her daughter with religion, was she?
From what I saw, no.
Your witness?
Good afternoon, Father. How are you?
Good, how are you?
You've been here, I saw you in the hallway, you've been waiting a long time to testify. You doing all right?
Yep.
Okay. Father, I just have a few questions for you. My understanding is that, well, strike that. You described that you went to All Children's on one occasion and that you were met by a caseworker, correct?
Correct.
Now, it was your understanding before you went that Jack had put you on a list that was approved, correct?
No, not that time.
Not that time, the next time?
The second time I went, yes.
Okay, all right. So the first time you went, were you aware that there was a list of people who had been approved to visit with Maya?
Objection, Your
No.
Honor. Calling for testimony on a docket without showing it to the witness, and I don't believe that docket reflects that.
Overruled. You can answer.
Okay. Were you aware that DCF had been involved and that there was, in fact, a shelter order in place for the hospital with regard to Maya?
All I had heard from Beata was that they couldn't see her. I didn't know there was a list, no.
Okay, and you didn't know anything about an order or why they couldn't see her?
No.
All right. Okay. And it's correct, sir, that with respect to the caseworker that you saw that day, you do not know whether or not that caseworker worked for the Department of Children and Family Services, correct?
No, I was just told it was a caseworker.
Okay. You don't know who she worked for, correct?
Right.
Okay. And with respect to the second visit that you went, which was about a week later,
I think it was, or a little in November, or I forget.
it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Right. But a week or so later, you went back, correct?
Yes.
All right. And at that time, you in fact were able to give Maya the sacrament of the sick or anointment of the sick, correct?
Yes.
And pray with her, correct?
Pardon?
And pray with her.
Yes.
All right. And are you aware, do you have any knowledge as to whether or not the hospital had arranged visits with the hospital chaplain or priest to give communion and pray with Maya?
No.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Anderson, anything further?
We were supposed to revisit one ruling under a different exception.
Anderson, you may proceed.
That hearing, you went to assist and comfort Fiala. Did she, was this right before she committed suicide?
Yes.
And did she say anything to you to indicate now what she was going to do? What did she say? What, if anything, did she say about the reason for all this?
What she had shared with me was, my daughter's deteriorating, we gotta get her home, and they're blaming me.
That's all I have.
Ms. Crowells.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Father, just to be clear, you were with her at a hearing when she made this statement, correct?
After the hearing, yes.
Right, and this was this was in the dependency court hearing with DCF, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Anything
Nothing
else?
further, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
Nothing further.
Members of the jury, do any of you have a question? Question? Okay. Father, may this witness be excused?
He may.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Father, you're free to go.
All right, thank you.
Okay, members of the jury, that's going to conclude the testimony for today. Obviously, put your notes back into the red well. My normal statements always apply. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation and receive no information. As you may recall, on Friday, we talked about how I've got matters that I need to handle outside your presence. So we're not going to have you in tomorrow. So your next day that you're going to be with us is Thursday. So I want you at the rallying point at the same time that Deputy Coley has asked you to be there for previous days. Okay? Have a good 2 days, and we'll see you on Thursday.
All rise, jurors exit.